It's the mid-90s, and you're standing at a bank counter that still smells like carpet and paper. Maybe it's your first real job. Maybe it's the first apartment with your name on the lease. And the young woman behind the glass slides a small rectangle of plastic across the counter and tells you it's just as good as cash. Better, even. No more checkbook. No more standing at the kitchen table on a Sunday, balancing a register the way your mother did, pen in hand, squinting at the math. You take it and something in you settles. Because this is what being a responsible adult looks like now. Your parents carried a checkbook and counted out bills. You've got this. One card, straight to your own money, no debt, no interest, nothing owed to anyone. It felt like graduating. It felt, honestly, like the safe choice. And for 30 years, you never questioned it. That debit card has been the default in your wallet ever since. The one you reach for at the pump, at the grocery store, at the little card reader on the counter of the place you go every week. It's your money spent from your own account, and that's exactly why it feels safe. But here's what nobody handed us along with that card. That feeling, that debit is the safe one because it's your own money, is the exact reason it's the card with the least protection you own. The card most of us treat as the backup, the one we were taught to be careful with, is actually the one the law was built to protect. We've been carrying the whole thing backwards, and the moment either of those cards gets stolen, what happens next, legally, to your actual money, is not what most of us assume. So let's sit across the table from this, honestly, because it sounds like a contradiction until you see the mechanics underneath it. The card you trust most is the one with the least protection. Not because anyone lied to you exactly, but because the thing that makes debit feel safe, that it's your own money, moving straight out of your own account, is the exact thing that makes it dangerous when something goes wrong. It feels like control. You're not borrowing, you're not running up a balance, you're spending what's actually yours. And our generation was practically raised to see that as the grown-up way to handle money. Meanwhile, the credit card sat in the drawer with a warning label on it. Debt, interest, the thing that gets people in trouble. We were careful with it precisely because it wasn't our money. And that caution, it turns out, was pointed at the wrong card. Because when you follow what actually happens the moment one of these cards gets stolen, not how it feels, but what the law says, dollar for dollar, the whole picture flips. The card you were careful with is the one that shields you. The card you trusted is the one that leaves you exposed. And the difference between them isn't small, and it isn't a matter of opinion. It's written into 2 different federal rules, and once you see how they work, you can't unsee it. Before we go further, one honest note. I'm not a lawyer or your financial advisor, and none of this is personal advice. It's just the plumbing our generation was never shown, so you can ask the right questions of your own bank when it counts. And if you've been reaching for that debit card your whole adult life the way I suspect a lot of us have, do me a favor and keep that in mind as we walk through this. I'll ask you at the end which one you've been defaulting to. Let's start with the card in your hand. Here's the mechanical truth about a debit card, the part the pitch at the counter left out. It's a direct line into your checking account. There's nothing sitting between the card and your money. No buffer. No middle step. So when that card number gets stolen, whether it's skimmed off a gas pump or lifted in a data breach you never even heard about, the money doesn't get requested out of your account. It leaves. The moment that fraudulent transaction clears, the balance is already gone. The rent money, the money set aside for the electric bill, whatever was in there. It's out, and now you're the one trying to get it back. And this is where the law gets specific in a way almost nobody knows until they're standing in it. Your protection on a stolen debit card comes from a federal rule called the Electronic Fund Transfer Act, Regulation E, and it runs on a clock. Think of it as a countdown with 3 steps, and each step you miss costs you more. If you report the fraud within 2 business days of learning about it, your liability is capped at $50. That's the good tier. Miss that window, and up to 60 days after your statement was sent, the cap jumps to $500. And then comes the part that stops people cold. If a fraudulent charge sits on your statement for more than 60 days before you report it, there is no federal cap at all. None. The law does not require the bank to give you a single dollar of it back. Whatever the thief took after that line, that's on you. So let me ask you the question the whole thing turns on, and answer it honestly to yourself. When do you actually look at your bank statement? Not when do you mean to. When do you really sit down and go through it? Line by line. because a lot of us check it eventually, quarterly maybe, when something feels off. And that habit, the perfectly reasonable habit of checking every so often, is exactly how a person sails right past that 60-day line without ever knowing the door was closing. And even when you're inside the protected window, even when you do everything right, there's a catch most people don't find out about until it's happening to them. When you dispute that charge, the bank can freeze the disputed money while it investigates. It's your account, your money, and you can't touch that portion of it while they decide whether to believe you. That investigation can legally run 10 business days for an in-state transaction, 20 for one out of state, before they're even required to put the money back temporarily. Picture that being the grocery money in the middle of the month while you wait. So think about what that debit card actually promised you. It promised control. It felt like the card that kept you in charge of your own money. But the truth is the opposite. The moment it's stolen, you're not the one in control of that money anymore. The bank is, for as long as it takes them to decide you were telling the truth. That's the deal underneath the plastic. Now, let me show you the other card, the one we were all taught to be nervous about. Now pull the credit card out of that drawer we were all told to be careful with. Here's the thing that changes everything about it. And it's so simple, it's almost frustrating that nobody frames it this way. A credit card isn't attached to your cash at all. When you spend on it, you're spending the bank's money, not yours. And that one structural fact is the whole ballgame. Because when a fraudulent charge shows up on a credit card, nothing has left your life. Your checking account is untouched. Your rent money is still sitting there. You're disputing a charge on the bank's money while your own money never moved. The problem stays the bank's problem until it's resolved, not yours. And the law that governs it, this one's called Regulation Z, the Fair Credit Billing Act, works nothing like that debit clock. There's no countdown, no tiers, no widening penalty for checking your statement late. Your liability for unauthorized use of a credit card is capped at $50. Flat. That's the ceiling whether you catch it in 2 days or 60. And in practice, most card issuers waive even that. You've probably seen the phrase zero liability on the back of an offer. So the realistic exposure on a stolen credit card, for most people, most of the time, is nothing. But the part I find genuinely remarkable, the part that tells you who these two rules were actually written to protect, is what happens to the burden of proof. On that debit card, when the money's already gone, you're the one on your heels, trying to convince the bank it wasn't you. On a credit card, it flips. The card issuer has to prove the charge was authorized. Not you proving you're innocent, them proving you're guilty. The whole weight of it sits on their side of the table instead of yours. And here's the thing I keep noticing about how our generation handles money, watching this same pattern play out for years. We were taught to trust the card that feels like our own money, and to be wary of the card that isn't ours. It was good instinct, aimed exactly wrong. The card we guarded turns out to be the shield. The card we relaxed with turns out to be the one that leaves us standing there, account drained, trying to prove a negative. So the honest question isn't which card feels safer. It's how did an entire generation of careful, responsible people end up carrying it exactly backwards? And that answer goes back a lot further than any card. To understand how we got it backwards, you have to go back to what money felt like when we were forming our ideas about it. We came up watching debt do damage. Maybe it was a father who talked about credit cards the way you'd talk about a loaded gun in the house. Useful, maybe, but keep the safety on and don't let the kids near it. Maybe it was watching someone you loved get buried under a balance they couldn't climb out from. And then, right when a lot of us hit our peak earning years, 2008 happened. We watched the whole institutional promise come apart. The mortgages, the banks, the pensions people had been told were guaranteed. If you were going to trust anything after that, it sure wasn't going to be borrowed money. So debit made perfect emotional sense. It was cash you didn't have to carry. No debt, no interest, no temptation, no way to spend money you didn't have. It felt like the disciplined choice, the choice that couldn't hurt you. And I want to be clear about something because it matters. That instinct wasn't dumb. It wasn't financial illiteracy. It was a generation that had watched debt wreck people and decided reasonably to stay on the safe side of it. The instinct was sound. It just got aimed at the wrong risk. We were so focused on protecting ourselves from the danger of owing money that we never stopped to ask which card actually protects our money once it's stolen. Those are two completely different questions, and the answer to the first one quietly gave us the wrong answer to the second. And here's why this isn't just a tidy little rule worth knowing. It's why it matters right now, at our age specifically. Our generation is being targeted financially in a way that's genuinely getting worse. Reported fraud losses among Americans over 60 rose roughly 400% between 2020 and 2024, reaching $2.5 billion in a single year. Now, I want to be careful and honest with you about that number, because you deserve the truth and not a scare tactic. Most of that figure is not stolen debit cards. It's investment scams, imposter scams, wire transfers, crypto, a whole different set of traps. I'm not telling you that $2.5 billion is card fraud, because it isn't. I'm telling you it's the weather we're all living in now. The people who target our generation are getting bolder and better, and in a climate like that, walking around with the least protected card as your everyday default is a bigger gamble than it used to be. The stakes went up. Most of us just never updated the card. So what do you actually do with this? And notice, I'm not going to tell you to panic or to run to the bank tomorrow or to tear up anything. That's not what this is. This is just you knowing which card carries the risk and deciding on purpose. The simplest move is this. For your everyday spending, and especially for anything online or anywhere unfamiliar, use the credit card and pay it off in full every month. That's the whole trick. You get the $50 or zero protection and the bank fighting the fraud on your behalf without ever carrying a balance or paying a dime of interest. You're not taking on debt. You're borrowing the bank's protection for 30 days and then settling up. The discipline you already have is what makes this safe. If you still want a debit card in your wallet for pulling cash out of an ATM, and a lot of us do, that's fine. Here's the quiet fix. Don't let it be tied to your main account, the one with the real money in it. Link it to a small, separate checking account, and keep just a little in there. That way, if that card ever gets compromised, the thief is reaching into a nearly empty room instead of into your rent and your savings. And whichever cards you carry, turn on the real-time text alerts your bank offers. That's what makes that 2-day window actually usable. You find out the moment something's wrong, not 90 days later, when you finally open the statement. Now, I know some of you use debit on purpose, precisely because you don't trust yourself with a credit card, and you'd rather feel the money leave. I respect that completely. If that's the wall that's kept you out of debt your whole life, don't tear it down. This was never credit good, debit bad. It's just know which card is holding the risk and make the choice with your eyes open. Maybe just for the online purchases, maybe just for the unfamiliar ones. Because in the end, this was never a story about being careless with money. It's the opposite. It's a story about a generation that was careful, genuinely, admirably careful, about exactly the wrong thing. We guarded against the debt we were burned by and left the back door open to the theft we didn't see coming. And now you know. That's the whole gift here, not fear, just the one piece of the picture nobody handed us at that counter 30 years ago. So let me ask you the thing I said I'd ask. Which card have you been defaulting to all these years? And is this the first time anyone's laid out that $50 versus no limit split for you? Tell me in the comments, because I have a feeling a lot of us are about to realize we've been carrying the exact same card for the exact same reason. And if this made one thing click into place, do someone in your life a favor and pass it along. There's a person you know who's been reaching for the wrong card for 30 years, same as we all have. And this is the kind of thing nobody tells you until you go looking. That's what we're here doing together. Go check which account that debit card is tied to. Then pour the coffee, and let's keep figuring out the stuff our generation was never handed. One honest piece at a time.